So James, thanks for joining us. It's been a year since you were last here in Barcelona. How much progress has Europe made in terms of the digital economy in that time?
Well, I think overall, from the conference that I've seen so far, it's so dynamic that you feel potential is infinite in a world like the mobile, because everything's moving to the handset. There's the convergence of the technologies. You see now how technologies can help people in their daily lives or driving their motor car or whatever else. So this is something where it becomes mainstream, proving the point that digital isn't outside somewhere, it is the economy today.
And in terms of Europe and its competitiveness, has it got the mobile networks it needs to compete with Korea and the US, etc.?
Well, since last year we've had a delegation go to Hong Kong, China and Korea, and certainly the answer when you see what's happening in a country like Korea, no, there isn't the political priority in Europe for digital investment which has been there in Korea for the last 15 years or so. So you see their objective, which I understand they'll be completing, of having 90% of 4G coverage by the end of 2015. We're nowhere near that across the European Union today because we just don't have the political priority for that. I don't think that the leadership understands of the technologies which we have in Europe, whether it be Ericsson or other operators, that we're quite capable of doing things if the political leaders provided the priority for completing the digital single market.
So how optimistic are you that things will change in that respect?
Well, I'm actually quite optimistic. I don't think we should be looking too much necessarily at the characters of the candidates going for the presidency of the Commission. They're not guys who have digital in mind, but I think that if you're looking at the substance of the issues, where you know that you've got economies across Europe which don't have free money, where you're looking to see how you're going to be able to not just have growth, but you've got to have jobs as well, this has to be backed by digital capacity technologies. So this message of having growth without debt would be translated for me into completing the digital single market by 2019, the next phase. And it's up to maybe the digital sector, the European companies, particularly to come up with how can this be done, what is needed in terms of removing the remaining obstacles, what's needed in terms of investment in infrastructure, because there are lots of places across Europe where you can't get 4G, you can't even get 2G, you can't get mobile signals, and this to many is stupefying in a day where technologies are ubiquitous.
So we need a better dialogue between industry and policymakers on this topic?
Well, undoubtedly, I think it's always the case when you have a new industry coming from something which, like this Congress, has come almost from nowhere to have a huge presence. It is how do you connect with politicians who are going to sell these messages, because you can invest, you can make sure things are done, and in some parts of the world you have the structures which are there. Europe is something particular which has lots of national champions, got lots of operators, maybe got many too many, and this needs to be sorted out so it can be a really competitive place for the global system. We've got the ideas, we've got lots of people who are interested in that, witness in the Congress today. We've got to make sure the connections are made, and I guess it's all about connections.
So James, how fast and how much impact will these technologies have on society?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that this isn't the beginning of the end of the revolution, as it might have been seen in the year 2000. This is the end of the beginning. We're in a phase of huge revolutions in the way in which technologies will impact on daily lives in businesses. So, for example, on 3D printing, one gets the feel that the third industrial revolution is very much part of this conversation, which will enable people to set up companies at a touch of a button to be able to invent different things. So, going forwards, I think it'll be the messages will need to be diverted in a simple way for politicians to understand, to be able to sell this, but it needs to be also understood that there's flexibility in the system. You can't just lay down rules and laws for a business which is burgeoning and developing in a whole range of different ideas. And I suspect these things are going to come faster than we think. And therefore it will be, I think, a battle to know how one can shape the new political participants post-2014 within the European Union, because they're the guys who'll be taking the decisions on the frameworks, not to be setting things in stone which is going to impede innovation and capacity of people to provide the jobs, because it isn't, I guess it's not going to be the state which is going to be creating, it's going to be the businesses which are creating the small businesses. So to enable them to take on these new technologies so they feel this is a plus rather than a minus, it's a mindset. And therefore I think to develop a positive mindset across the European Union to the new technologies and harness that must be done, I think, together with the businesses and politicians to make sure these messages get across.
So leave scope for innovation.
So very much so. I mean, there was the big speech by the head of Alcatel the other day, setting out some ideas. And it'd be wonderful to have more contributions from European leaders to be putting forward, like we did in the 1980s, for completing the single market by '92. That was led by the businesses. So from the digital businesses, if they can also put their ideas together, feed them into the process, then the politicians can discuss and debate and then decide, I think, in joint interest.